This video walks you through solving a system by substitution. The process starts out the same way as graphing, getting y by itself, which can be confusing for people, but after you get y by itself, or one of the variables by itself, the process shifts a little bit and you don't end up graphing anything. So I am going to use this system down here, and step one, like I said, is the same as graphing. You want to solve one of the variables or to either get either x or y by itself. And when I look at those two, 2x plus 3y equals 5 and x minus 5y equals 9, I think the second equation, so I'll call this equation B, is going to be the easiest one to get a variable by itself. So step one. Solve for one of the variables, x minus 5y equals 9. And in this case, I am going to solve the equation, this particular equation for x. I'm going to solve that by adding 5y to both sides of my equation. And I end up with x equals 9 plus 5y. So I've rewritten equation B so that one of the variables, x, is all by itself. X equals 9 plus 5y. The second step is going to be to substitute into the second equation. So we're going to substitute 9 plus 5y in for x into the equation we haven't used. So we haven't used equation A yet. So here it goes, 2x plus 3y equals 5. This is step 2. And I am going to replace the x with 9 plus 5y. So this kind of looks a little strange at the moment. I'm going to write 9 plus 5y in here. But the reason that we're doing that is to have just one variable, either x or y. It's easier to work with then. All right. Step 3 is to solve that second equation for the remaining variable. So if you look here, I really don't have any x's left. I just have y's. I'm going to distribute the 2. 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 5 is 10, 10y, plus 3y equals 5. I'll combine my like terms, so now I've got 18 plus 13y equals 5. Subtract 18 on both sides of my equation. 13y is left on the left. On the right, 5 minus 18 is going to be a negative 13. And finally, dividing both sides by 13, I end up with y equaling negative 1. So that's part of my answer. I found out what y is, but remember there are two variables to solve for here. We have one more step still to do. Step 4 says to take the value we found. So we're going to take the value we found, negative 1, plug the value you found, negative 1, into the first equation to find the value of the other variable. So we found that y was equal to negative 1. We need to find out what x equals. All right, we just used equation A. Let's use equation B. So step 4. X minus 5y equals 9. We know that y equals negative 1. So, minus 5 times negative 1 equals 9, right? Y equals negative 1, and we're just plugging it in. Negative 5 times a negative 1 is a positive 5, so x plus 5 equals 9, and if I subtract 4 on both sides, or subtract 5 on both sides, I'll end up with x equals 4. So now I have both answers. X equals 4, y equals negative 1, and you can leave your answer like that, or you can write it as an ordered pair for negative 1. So let's just recap this here. First step was to solve one of the equations for one of the variables. We chose equation B, x minus 5y equals 9, because it was pretty easy to get x by itself, which we did. X equals 9 plus 5y. Step 2 was to substitute 9 plus 5y into the other equation, back into equation A. So we took out the x and plugged in 9 plus 5y. That was right there. Step 3 was to solve that equation for the remaining variable. So we did some algebra, we distributed the two, blah, and found out that y equals negative 1. Last step, step 4, was to take the value that we found, y equals negative 1, and substitute it yet again back into one of the equations. We chose x minus 5y equals 9, and we solved for x, and x equals 4. So our final answer is 4, negative 1.